What's up, guys, and welcome to the weekly Q&A. Our first question comes from Mustafarian, who asks why IG-11 and other bounty hunters were instructed to terminate Baby Yoda, how dare they, while the Mando was told to bring him in alive.
I thought that was an interesting question, and it's like one that people have asked before, but I just kind of started to actually think about how Moff Gideon seemed pretty intent on wanting the child alive, but why did Werner Herzog's character, the client, say, oh, if it dies, it dies?
I don't know how to cover his ears
They're
enough.
too big.
I don't know if I should keep holding this in.
I mean, I guess they just have different priorities, and it may be Moff Gideon shot the client because he heard, he said it was okay if it died. There could be any number of reasons why he would shoot the client. It also could have been that he got tricked, you failed me for the last time kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we still don't know why they want the child in the first place. So I think it'll come down to whenever we find that out and whether or not they needed the child alive for whatever they wanted it for or not.
My guess is that maybe the client just had different priorities than Gideon, and Gideon was above him in the chain of command, but the client was probably like, we shouldn't be wasting our time going after this baby, and maybe he just wanted it out of the way.
Wasted time.
Well, we don't know. Yeah, like you said, we don't know what they want it for, so maybe they will. I'm sure they'll get into that at some point. And maybe Dr. Pershing was just not there every time the client hired another bounty hunter. He just happened to be there for the Mandalorian and was like, whoa, 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 whoa.
No, we want it alive.
Yeah, we want it alive. So it's interesting. I just get the vibe that the client just wasn't on the same page as everyone else.
Yeah, and maybe it's one of the things that's like, oh, it's worth more to some clients alive versus dead, but any price will do for some clients. They might just be in it for the money.
Don't know.
We'll see, maybe. Caleb Diaz wants to know how we feel about the idea that you shouldn't pander to fan expectations in storytelling.
And he's specifically quoting some things said by Rian Johnson and Dave Filoni, and I mean, I think that there's a balance to be had. The Force Awakens was a movie that I loved, and I think I think it panders. I still love it, but it also did some it introduced a bunch of new characters that I really liked. I think The Mandalorian does a lot of pandering as well, but it still has stuff to say. It still introduces new stuff and new characters. So again, when it comes to these big fandoms, I think there's a balance.
I agree. And it's you could argue that if you're going to make a Star Wars or something in the Star Wars universe, you need to make it feel like Star Wars. And there might be a little bit of pandering going on in order to make that happen. But I think that's fine as long as it's not going too far.
Yeah, I mean, so Rogue One, I've talked about this before, but the R2-3PO scene in Rogue One, I think is too far. Where it's
we didn't need to know that they were there.
There was a better way to include them in the movie rather than just stopping the scene dead to be like, look, there they are. There they are.
Look who's there.
Yeah. So at the same time, you can't do nothing but pander. You have to drive the story forward in new ways. And I think I said this in The Last Jedi review, that it's not my favorite Star Wars movie, but it does so much new stuff that I found that side of it to be exciting, but it was still challenging. So.
Yeah. And I think the further we get away from the whole canon reset Disney buys Star Wars thing, the further we get away from that day, the less pandering we're going to see. Like, I don't think we're going to see a ton of it in the High Republic stuff.
Yeah, and that's also, like, I'm really excited about the High Republic because then it kind of removes that temptation to pander. And I'm sure there's still going to, like, Yoda's probably going to be in it.
But hopefully not a lot.
Right. A balance. So, yeah, I think that for the most part, you need to be driving new ideas in new directions to keep the story fresh and exciting. But, like, yeah, I can't say that I don't think that most of those little moments aren't fun. I love most of them.
Yeah. Sooner Thrawn asks what we thought of the first chapter of Light of the Jedi. So if you missed it, StarWars.com?
IGN, actually.
Okay. IGN released the first chapter of Charles Soule's High Republic book that will be coming out in
January.
But
it was supposed to come out in August, and everything got delayed. And I already did a video on my thoughts of it, but we had talked about it, and you have different thoughts, so I thought we'd open it up and talk about it some more.
I thought it was really interesting, and I like what they're setting up with the idea that hyperspace lanes are a very new thing, and like traveling through hyperspace is new and kind of dangerous, and like you don't really know what's going to happen.
I don't think hyperspace itself is new. It's more these lanes to the outer rim. Right. They are there's fewer of them. Hyperspace is still kind of just in this dangerous state, but I think it's still been around for a while.
Yeah. And when you said what it was setting up, I was like, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. But the whole first chapter is like, I don't know. It's a great chapter, but at the end.
Okay, real quick. I guess should have thrown a spoiler alert out there. If you want to go into Light of the Jedi with zero spoilers and knowing nothing, I'll put a time code to skip ahead to.
Yeah, so spoilers for the end of chapter 1 of this book. The ship ends up crashing or something.
It just explodes.
It just explodes. And something went wrong with that hyperspace lane.
It introduces a bunch of new characters and then they all die. Maybe. It's still kind of up in the air. But yeah, I was impressed with it because I found myself, I kind of figured that was going to be the case. Charles Soule, back at the High Republic event thing, said that the first chapter sets up a great disaster. And so I was like, okay, these people are all going to die. But I found myself getting attached to them in spite of that. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was very well written. And yeah, the great disaster itself is that this ship has to avoid an object it detects in hyperspace, which shouldn't happen. And then it explodes because it shouldn't be making maneuvers like that in hyperspace, but they had no other choice. So now all this debris is flying out of hyperspace at crazy fast speeds, and it could fly into any planet, anywhere, and now the Jedi have to figure out how to stop that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very unique threat to Star Wars. It's something we haven't seen before. I also think that wasn't a one-time thing, that was done on purpose by the Nile.
Yeah, it'll probably set up the bad guys.
And it's going to happen again.
Drakerthan 101 wants to know if Exegol was the source of the dark side that Palpatine sensed in the Aftermath books.
I think that for now we can say yes.
Sure.
I don't think that was what Chuck Wendig was writing in Aftermath. And he has kind of said as much, that he was putting little potential things that could pay off, but didn't necessarily have to. Like, there's a tall blonde girl on Jakku that gets a little time of focus, and it's like, oh, that could be Phasma. Mm. But then it turns out that it wasn't, because Phasma got a whole different backstory in her own book.
Right.
But that feels like something that now retroactively could be, yes, Palpatine was looking for Exegol, and obviously he found it at some point, but...
Yeah. I imagine it's interesting to me that he wouldn't have known about that planet until much later, but...
Well, we don't know when like we're learning about this in the Aftermath books from like a secondhand source who's like, yeah, Palpatine was looking for this. He didn't say when or where. Thrawn was mentioned as helping out, so it was probably still in like the days before A New Hope that Palpatine eventually found Exegol and set up this cloning stuff, etc., etc.
He's like, in the event that I die,
gotta have those contingencies.
Yeah. Cameron Story asks what we think about the news that EA will double down on making Star Wars games.
I hadn't heard about this. I had to go look for it. But yeah, there was like an interview, or maybe it was a sales call or something, but EA just reiterated that they had a good relationship with Lucasfilm and that they have found success in their most recent Star Wars games, which, I mean, I would agree. I loved Fallen Order. I'm very excited about Squadrons. I'm still kind of like not wild about the idea that they're the only people that get to make Star Wars games.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been doing a great job. They've done a ton of work to make up for, you know, the mishaps,
the Battlefront 2 launch with all the loot boxes,
the kerfuffle, if you will. Yeah, the loot box stuff, the microtransactions, whatever. People love to bring that stuff up over and over, but I think they've done more than enough to make up for it. And like you said, Jedi Fallen Order was a fantastic game, and it got great reviews. And, you know, if they keep going forward making new and interesting stuff like that, I'm 100% on board and excited to see what else they can do.
I mean, what I like about the idea that they're doubling down is that hopefully that means double the games will be coming out, because that's been, I think, one of the biggest issues. And we're not huge gamers. I don't play every game that comes out. So I haven't been like dying for Star Wars games. And then the ones that did come out, Fallen Order, I loved. I'm not super into FPSs, so the Battlefront games were like, yeah, I enjoyed these, but I didn't play them a ton. Mm-hmm. I would like to see more variety and just more games in general, because then it's like, well, if this game wasn't for you and you didn't like this one, well, the next one that's coming out in 6 months might be more up your alley.
I think that they should put something out for the Switch, maybe for a younger audience.
I mean, we just got Pod Racer, haven't played it yet, but
that's true.
That's not EA. But yeah, like, I was never wild about the idea that they signed an exclusivity contract with EA. I like the days of, you know, lots of publishers can pitch things, and then it does add more variety, and you do tend to get more games. Yeah,
but they are working with other companies like DICE and Motive.
Well,
and
EA just owns all of them.
Respawn, but still, it's new pairs of eyes to look at things differently.
Yeah, and I am glad that, you know, there are all these different publishers, but also like Amy Hennig's, who was that? I forget her studio that got shut down. That's gonna bug me. I can't think of it, but like that game sounded awesome. Fallen Order, I think.
1313.
No, we never got a title for it, but people were thinking that 1313 could have inspired it in some way. I don't know. It seems like EA's got a better handle on things now.
Yeah.
Like I said, the Fallen Order knocked it out of the park, and I will do anything to get sequels to that. Squadrons is also right up my alley.
We keep hearing rumblings about KOTOR, whether or not it's a remake or.
Well, those are all rumors.
I know, but if, you know, imagine if EA is working on something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that would definitely, people would be excited about that. Yeah, and that's just a different type of game that they have not done yet in this new era. So yeah, I'm just keep that variety coming, and hopefully when you say double down, I would love to see double the games.
Yeah, hopefully it's not quantity versus quality. I don't think that's the case. Yeah, I'm excited to see what they've got coming.
It's more a question of having multiple projects in the pipeline where I would be shocked if they're not working on. I mean, they basically said Fallen Order is going to be a franchise, so I'm sure they're working on that right now. And I don't want them to rush it. I want it to come out when it comes out. But then there ideally would be like another game that's in the pipeline with another studio, so that 6 months, a year after Fallen Order, it's like, here's another great game that wasn't rushed.
Yeah.
But it's been worked on for a while. That's it for patron questions. If you're a patron and you didn't see your question answered here, just head over to Patreon where we left you a written response. If you're not a patron, you can learn more by following the link in the description. Just $1 a month will get you access to extra Star Wars Explained content, like audio commentaries for the films and for the Clone Wars, and this week's episode is Counterattack, so that's available right now if you're interested.
On to YouTube questions, Jedi Spartan 38 asks how we think characters like Luke, Leia, or Galen Merrick would have turned out if their training had started at a younger age.
I think that the age thing, when it comes to the Jedi, was just another one of those rules that they were following, and they got too concerned with those rules, or decided that, it sure is a lot easier to indoctrinate a baby than an adult. And I mean, it's harder to teach an old dog new tricks, for example.
Yeah, but it seems like, I don't know, most of the most well-known Jedi got started late.
It does seem that way.
With the exception of Ahsoka, who is certainly a special case and got taught by the best of the best. She basically was taught by every good Jedi at the time.
Well, yeah, I think that I don't necessarily think that training a Jedi from a very young age is a bad thing, but I also don't think it's the only way.
Right.
And I think that the Jedi got too focused in on their methods and saying, no, this is to be Mandalorian. This is the way, and it's the only way. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, I don't think so. I think that everyone, regardless of age, has the ability to choose the light over the dark and learn how to be better. And I do think that that is ultimately the point of a lot of the talk with the Jedi. It's like, okay, you're too focused on this because it's like the easy thing to do and not necessarily the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really say to those specific characters because I like their stories the way that they are, and I don't want to really try to think about how they would have been different. Because, we know from the certain point of view book that Yoda wanted to train Leia. And it's like, well, we could spend all day thinking about what that would have been like. But overall, I like the story the way that it is.
Yeah, and if we're talking about training Luke a different way, I want to stick with him because Yoda and Obi-Wan up to right in Return of the Jedi, they're like, you got to go kill your dad. And Luke's like, I can't do that. And it's the fact that he refuses to do what his masters say and instead shows compassion to his father. That's what brings Darth Vader back and saves the galaxy. If they'd been indoctrinating Luke from a young age and saying you got to kill your dad, it's the only way, you better listen to us, that probably wouldn't have gone well.
Right. I'll be interested to see, I keep bringing up the High Republic, but there is a story specifically about a very young Jedi in the High Republic. And so maybe we'll get to see what things were like back then when maybe they were being trained from a very early age.
Well, they're still being trained from a very early age in the prequels. But the fact that there's a very young...
We'll never know how those turned out.
Yeah. The fact that there's a very young Jedi, I think shows a little more flexibility in the High Republic. And we've speculated on this before that I think the High Republic Jedi are going to be a lot different, a lot more flexible. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested to see how they are presented.
Yeah. I still want to see Tamiri Blagg, aka Broom Boy, come swinging into a story one day. Guns
with
ablazing.
His broom. Broom ablazing.
Brooms ablazing. He doesn't have a lightsaber, but he can use the Force.
He doesn't need a lightsaber. He's got that broom.
Maybe the broom is a lightsaber. And
he makes his hilt out of the old lightsaber, out of the old broom. That's it.
That's the one.
Mm-hmm.
Nether Spark wants to know where we see Star Wars villains going and if we will be stuck in an endless loop of red lightsabers.
I don't think we will. I absolutely think the Sith are coming back in the form of like prequel stories, Old Republic, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the High Republic goes, the Nile are going to be very different, I think. To talk about that chapter again, I'm kind of guessing for now that okay, if you want to skip ahead again for spoilers, sorry. I'll put a time code. But I kind of get the sense that they were trying to trap the ship. I mean, probably destroy it, but then salvage what they could from it rather than have it miss the object and explode.
Mm-hmm.
They're described as like space Vikings. And that's just a very different thing that I don't think the Jedi of this time are equipped to handle.
Yeah.
People that want to not take over the galaxy, but just hurt others for their own gain.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've brought this up a lot. The end of Solo, bringing up Darth Maul being in charge of Crimson Dawn. Yes, he has a red lightsaber, but I want to see more of Crimson Dawn, more Dryden Voss type characters. Just the crime syndicates in general. Like, I really hope we get a show or something showcasing more of that, because I want to see those characters again. I want to see Kira again and Maul and just what those crime syndicates look like.
Yeah. So, yeah, we got crime syndicates as an option. We have the Nile, which is going to come up next. We've got the Sith will show up sooner or later in Old Republic stuff, but they will look different. They're not going to be rule of 2 Sith. It's going to be like big ol' armies, probably.
Do you think we'll ever see the Sith, like the pureblood Sith, in canon?
I don't think so. I was fine with that idea in Legends. I thought they looked cool. I think they're kind of getting away from that. I think the Sith are always just going to be an offshoot of the Jedi. That's how they've been described so far in canon.
Yeah.
And then it'll be most interesting to see what they do whenever they jump into the future. Because it's like, I think the Sith should be gone forever. I don't want them to keep popping back up.
Well, Palpatine was all the Sith, and he's super dead now.
You would hope so. Somehow, he's back again. But I think that in the future, it'll be interesting to see what they do, because it's kind of like that idea of power creep, and you want to up the stakes, but you don't want to make, I don't know, I've heard rumors of like the Jedi fighting Sith gods. And it's like, okay, well, I don't want to really get to that point. That feels a little too much.
Yeah, I mean, we could dive straight into the Mortis arc type stuff and have Force-wielding gods fighting each other instead of the Jedi being involved at all.
Or the sun comes back and threatens the galaxy, and yeah, the future Jedi have to stop against that. And I don't know, like the Sith, I think, are going to be gone, but whatever comes next is probably still going to be powered by the dark side and be similar. So
yeah, it would be cool to see if the sun were to come back and like just his dark side influence like possess people, and we get just like dark side zombies or something like that. Those are the new big bad.
Yeah. The future is like, it could be anything.
Simon Vigil Garcia asks if we could see Iden Versio and Inferno Squad in the Squadrons story campaign.
So we actually talked about this yesterday in our Squadrons Q&A video, but I know not everyone probably watched that, so wanted to talk about it here too. I kind of think so.
Yeah, I mean, why not? I mentioned in the Q&A that the story writers are the same, and they could...
The writers of Battlefront 2,
Yeah.
the story, wrote there's one new writer for Squadrons, but Mitch and Walt Williams are back to write Squadrons.
Yeah, and they created those characters, and they could easily write them into this story.
And they love Shriv. We all love Shriv, so I could absolutely see him especially make a return. And there is also just this kind of gap in the Battlefront 2 campaign that the Squadrons campaign could fill in, because it takes place in between Return of the Jedi and the Battle of Jakku.
Yeah. Daniel Patterson wants to know if Anakin brought balance to the Force, or did he bring about balance to the Force? Explain this to me.
Yeah, so was he the chosen one? Did he bring balance to the Force in Return of the Jedi, or was he the chosen one in that his bloodline brought about Luke and Leia, who then trained Rey, and then she brought balance to the Force? The way I interpret it is that balance is something that is not permanent. I think that Anakin was the chosen one in that he did bring balance to the Force. He destroyed the Sith for a time. That's one of the reasons I'm not crazy about Palpatine coming back in Episode 9, because it's like, it makes the Chosen One prophecy even weirder. And I never really liked the Chosen One prophecy in the first place, because it seemed like an unnecessary, like, making Anakin way more important than he had to be.
Yeah. Well, Yoda mentions that maybe the prophecy was misread, and I think
that too.
I think that's definitely a possibility, and maybe who's writing these prophecies anyway.
Yeah.
Whoever wrote this prophecy, maybe it's more like a Buffy situation, where in every generation there is a chosen one, and Anakin happened to be the one at the time, maybe, and then it was Luke, and then it was Rey, and on and on and on.
Yeah, some of the comics have brought up this idea of just vessels of the Force, that the Force is going to find who it needs to complete its will in any given time. And so Anakin was a vessel, Luke was a vessel, Leia was a vessel, Rey, and probably Ben Solo. Like, I think they were just chosen as significant people in these given times. I mean, hell, I think Han was probably a vessel in some ways.
Yeah. He helped create Ben Solo.
Right. So, yeah, I do think, I still think Anakin is the chosen one of prophecy. But just because he fulfilled that one prophecy doesn't mean that the Sith won't return, and that balance will one day fall out of whack again. Like, that prophecy is probably just not as important as we are making it in our own minds.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling to really think deeply about the Force and how it works, because it's all about balance. And if you completely eradicate the Sith and the dark side from the galaxy, do you still have balance?
I think in George Lucas's mind, yes. I mean, he has in interviews defined balance as choosing the light. So I don't. People have argued before that, well, when Anakin took part in Order 66 and then there were 2 Sith and 2 Jedi left, like, that's pretty balanced. And it's like, well, that's not what George meant. So I guess thematically, balance is something that we as people are supposed to continue seeking, and it's not like a one-time thing. It's a constant struggle to, seek out the light and not give in to the dark.
Cypher Foxy asks if Moff Gideon had a Star Destroyer.
So they asked this specifically because when the client calls Gideon, he's standing up in the hologram and not like sitting down in a TIE fighter. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense.
Where is he standing?
And why did he have to come in on a TIE fighter? I kind of like that idea. And it does make sense to me that he would have a Star Destroyer up in orbit.
Yeah. But how many Star Destroyers are left moseying around the planets right now.
I don't know. Not many, but
Right.
I like the idea that he has something that's a threat. I mean, it could be a smaller ship. It could be an Arquitans or an Acclimator or something. Right?
What?
They could be smaller command ships, which I still think would be cool. But the idea that he has a Star Destroyer, like, that would make him a bigger deal and a bigger threat.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would love to see another Star Destroyer in The Mandalorian, but I don't think they would make a big deal out of it.
I mean, it's something I could see them now. I could see them kind of leading to this. One of my favorite segments of Lost Stars, the book, is when some rebels go in to take down a Star Destroyer, and like they have this very specific, here's how we do it and what we have to hit and in what order. It would be really fun to see Din and his gang have to go in and take down a Star Destroyer. I would love to see
What's Baby Yoda's job?
I guess he'd be using the Force. Like, maybe they just carry him around like this and he's just got his hands out.
Just aim him wherever.
He's just constantly Force pushing, and they're just...
I hope that's the case.
That's all the time we have for questions today. If you want to leave a question for next week's video, just put it in the comments below or sign up for Patreon to join our weekly Q&A discussion. Also, we had a giveaway last week and our winner was Chris Stead, so congratulations. I already sent an email out to you to get your contact information. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
And as always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.